we just had our first question from Sydney Ohm. As a storyboarder, how much do you have to be on model when it comes to drawing the characters?
Cool. For that first part of the question, it depends on the production. If you're working in prime time, those are shows like Family Guy, Simpsons, even newer ones like Big Mouth. You have to be pretty on model. That's kind of the way their system's set up, because overseas we'll use those boards as a facsimile for the layout. If you're working on an outline-driven show, you can be less on model. What really matters is that you have correct proportions. That's the key. If the proportions are off, the overseas animation studio will copy that, and you'll have to do an animation retake, which costs a lot of money. If you have to do it, 1,000 times, you drew the arm too long or whatever, it really adds up. So that's why storyboarding, it's so important to be on model, because it costs a lot of money if you aren't. Yeah, and I'd say, that's about it. What do you think about clicking through different panel? Oh, that's the best way. Sorry, I might have missed another. What is priority for drawing a character for boards and TV? When I'm looking through a test or a portfolio, it's about being consistent. You're drawing the model character on model, and the proportions are correct.
Great. We have one from Jack Salazar. What does a good storyboard portfolio look like?
Well, for TV, it depends on what you're trying to break into. If you want to be a revisionist, I just care about drawings, your drawing ability. If you're a revisionist, you're not going to be thumbnailing. In fact, you really shouldn't, because of guild protections. You're a reviser. You get red lines from the director. So I want to see how well you can draw. And if you're able to, if it looks like you can take a red line, which is a red scribble that the director would draw, and you'd be able to put it on model and make it look like the show. That's really what I care about, because that is going to save me time. If you can't draw, if you have great thumbnails and great storytelling chops, but your drawings aren't there, then you aren't going to save me time, and I probably wouldn't hire you, even if you have great at storytelling visually. It's really all about the drawing when you first trying to break in. And it's too bad, because that isn't, I mean, there's a ton of shows that don't have great drawing but great storytelling, and it might work for you to break into that kind of show. Yeah.
Thank you.
Did we miss one with Dandelion? Sorry.
Mm-hmm.
Posting a page with a bunch of panels. How many panels per page?
Okay.
Yeah, the best way to display your portfolio online is, for me, and I think a lot of directors in modern TV boards, is you have one panel. I like SlideShare or Google Slides or LinkedIn Slides, and I'm able to click through it and kind of watch it in real time. Well, the timing of me clicking through it. The reason that is because with programs like Storyboard Pro, Flash, Photoshop, whatever, boards have gotten to a place where an animatic is almost expected to be a fully fleshed out thing that we're able to send overseas. So I want to see how it plays, and I want to see that how many drawings to put in there, and if you're using the right drawings, and you watch it and you click through and you can tell, like, oh, this, I get it. Like I can tell the flow and everything. I know some people like it all displayed as a big box, but I'd argue against that nowadays, even because you're looking at everything on the computer. I don't think people want to get like real close and look at the big box of panels. You can see the shot choices that way, but um, honestly, most people prefer the single panel. One thing you could do is single panel, and then beneath a row of boxes showing your different shots.
From Matt Gomez, what exactly does a storyboard revisionist do? Are they allowed to add any of their personality to boards, or are they just there to clean up the board artist's drawings?
Yeah, that depends on the production. Like I worked on Adult Swim shows, and those are non-union, and they're kind of like, come on in, like everyone, you want to do that? Sure thing. Uh, you have a lot more leeway. I worked on an animator on some of those, and you could come up with whatever side gags you want, even though that should be done in the board phase usually. I'd say a lot of revisionists don't have that much freedom. A lot of times you're probably going to be busy doing revisions, revising acting, because say the audio comes in and there's new audio and the acting is different, so you'll have to repose. There's a lot of conforming you have to do, which is really boring. Conforming is prepping the storyboard for overseas. You have to go through and make sure all the incidentals, which are like characters in a crowd, are labeled and numbered, and you have to make sure all the panel numbers make sense. You have to sometimes, depending on the production, you have to break up different type of camera moves so that the overseas team has an idea of what the background is and what the characters are on top. So it can get kind of technical. It's easy to learn. Like if the director, whoever's hiring, wants to give you a chance because you got good drawings, that's the kind of stuff you can learn on the job. They're not like, you don't know how to conform. No, we're not going to hire you. You can definitely learn that. I'd also say storyboard revisionists, sometimes, like, if you want to be a go-getter and be like, hey, I got a great pitch or great idea for this moment, and you plus it and it makes sense, people are going to love that. So no one will say, no one will be like, what did you do? I think that's a great thing. And it can be fun. When I was a revisionist, I swear it was my favorite job because I'd finish early. It would look good, and you're a hero all the time because all the directors are like, "Oh, we were behind, but you did it. Thank you." And it looks great. So, and you go home on time. You're done. They give you a set amount of work, and you're done. On top of that, a lot of times you're working really fast as a revisionist. You have the deadline. We got to send this animatic out by Friday, so we need all this work by Thursday night. And you get all done by Thursday night, and Friday you have nothing to do, so you can just chill and surf the web or do some free drawings, and you're still a hero. So it's pretty great being a revisionist. You get paid decently too. You get paid around I don't know, when I did, I think it was around $1,500 a week, which is pretty good money, I think, for what you need to do for the job.
Thank you so much. From Andrew Arvin, I'm entering the storyboarding track for Nick's artist program.
Oh, great.
What's the max level of polish they usually expect for their finalists?
I'm not really sure for the Nick artist program. However, what I'd recommend is I'd go on like Loud House or whatever kind of their big cartoons are right now. I'd look up the credits of the storyboard artists, and then I'd find them online. And then I'd check out their work and their portfolios, and I'd try and hit that. That's kind of the people they hire and who they like working with. So that's probably what you could expect your boards to look like. I found, different places will have different kind of in-house styles, and because the artists there will all network and they all know each other and they start drawing a certain way, especially, between comedy and action comedy. The storyboards all look really different if you compare Voltron to Loud House. So knowing where you're going to be working or applying, like Nick, and then catering your boards towards that would make sense. I think a lot of the boards there they use like a gray background, and then they'll have the character usually in black lines, so it'll pop a little bit more, and maybe they'll do a white fill for the character. What I'd focus on too is just your drawings, making sure your drawings are really solid.
Thank you. From Sylvester Massey, for a storyboard portfolio, can we as a storyboard artist do a sequel story of an existing film?
Yeah, you can. One thing to consider is if the person reviewing the portfolio has seen the film or not. If you're able to do it and they don't need any context to understanding it, then sure, yeah, if it can stand on its own. However, personally, I'd try and stay away from that because I don't know, they might have something in their head like, oh, I've seen that film, oh, I hate that film, or this is weird, like it's fan art. You don't know what people will think. I think it's better if you are able to come up with your own story, something simple, like usually with a physical dilemma, something like a cat being chased by a dog, or a squirrel trying to get a nut from a hard part of the tree. And if you're able to tell that story in a really clear way, if you keep it a physical dilemma, that means it's going to be visually driven. So I think that's a good rule of thumb for doing a board. It also changes, I think, between feature and TV. Feature boards, they're looking for different stuff than TV. TV is more like, hey, they can draw technically really well. And if it's script driven, they don't care about your writing as much. If it's board or outline driven, they're going to care more about your writing and like your voice, what they think you're going to bring as a creative.
Awesome. Another one from Sylvester Massey. What are some of the mistakes you see on a storyboard portfolio from a rookie storyboard artist?
Oh, from a repeat storyboard artist?
Rookie.
Oh, rookie? The first I'd say is people will do too many shots. I'll get like a board test where, for example, the Mammo board test is the three characters open a pickle jar. That's the premise. In an interesting, each one does it in their unique way. Try and show that. And we've gotten board tests where it's 50 different shots, and it's really long and huge. And you don't want to do that because the viewer will get overwhelmed by the amount of shots. A lot of times beginners will have like, oh, this person's talking, I'll do a single on that person. And then this person talks, I'll do a single on them. This person talks, I'll do a single on them. What you want to do is group characters together and have them all give out their dialogue quickly. When you cut, you're kind of, each time you're cutting, it's hurting the film. The second one would be people frame too tight. More often too tight than too wide. And I think that comes from being experienced as an illustrator, but not an animator. When you're animating, you want frame space around the characters so that they can act. So if you're beginning, just shrink every panel by 10%, and usually you'll be better. Let me see. The next one I can think of is perspective. And that's something everyone struggles with, I think. Even artists who have been working forever, they'll they'll do kind of fake perspective. You don't have to have perfect perspective, but you do want to make sure the characters are standing solidly on the ground on whatever grids you put down. And you want to make sure that they, if their chest is above the horizon line, you want to draw the belts and the things with a slight up curve because you want to indicate that upward perspective. You just want to make sure everything feels solid. Yeah, let me see. The last one. Oh, the last one is kind of a big one, and it's bad posing. I think a lot of beginning artists, they'll have beautiful drawings, but they won't animate well. And that's because we'll have all the forms, like the hands will be inside the body like this, and they'll be tangenting with the sides, and they'll be beautifully drawn. But if that went into animation, it wouldn't be a clear silhouette. You want to always go for a clear silhouette. You want to have characters where the flow line will flip, because then you know that they're going to animate well when they get sent overseas. You have to think of the overseas team as kind of like a big robot or machine. Whatever papers you send into this machine, they're going to spit out a copy of that. That'll be colored and cleaned up, but it won't be quite as good as the original. So you need to make the original thing you put in really strong. So that means strong posing. The rule of silhouette is a super important thing to follow. And there's a lot of little posing rules that I think are important. For one, you don't want, at least in 2D animation, because the acting isn't going to be great in TV animation. There's no budget for it. So I try and limit like vac view head acting like this, where you're just seeing the back of the head and the character's talking. In feature, they'll do amazing animation. You'll know who's talking. They'll have a distinct voice and all that kind of stuff. But in TV, you don't have that luxury. So you usually want to have the character's face facing forward. You want to limit profile acting, because profile acting, you don't get as much emotion. It's not as clear. It can be used for sure. Like if two characters are really mad at each other and they're head to head, that's great. It's super clear. But you don't want a character to give an emotional piece of dialogue in the profile. It just doesn't read. Sorry. Those were the 4 things. So perspective, posing. It's like remembering the 7 dwarfs. Composition, cluttered compositions, and whatever the last one was. I can't remember.
Thank you. From Haley Hustis, because of the pandemic, a lot of trainee programs were canceled. Can you recommend other methods for trying to enter the industry without any experience?
Yeah, that's tough because every job I've ever gotten is through a network, through an internship, through someone I know. It's all about networking. And those trainee programs, I'd argue it's less about them training you and more about you becoming friends with the people working there. And they're like, I like Haley, let's hire her because we like her and she can do a pretty good job. And she's definitely like eager for this and wants to do the work. So that is your best way in, is through an internship or a trainee program. I'd say you can take classes. I just recently took a class at CDA, which was wonderful, and it had a lot of great artists in the class. Some of them were working, some of them were had skills enough where they could be working, but maybe they hadn't had a break-in yet. And I know a lot of people who've taken classes at CDA who have gotten their break because they meet a friend there and that friend starts working, they get hired, or a teacher there will hire them. They're like, hey, this student's great. We need a revisionist, we need a board artist, let's hire them. So I'd say taking classes can be good. The problem is you have to pay money for that. They do have, for a lot of the classes, they have like rebates and stuff you can get. Sometimes it's you have to be a union member to get them, but something to look into. Um, I think just being proactive about meeting people, even doing CTN events and getting to know people through there, or uh, Women in Animation, they have a mentorship program. I think that opened up recently. There's a CIFA Hollywood. They have programs. I think the union will have events, things like that. For being an artist where you're kind of an introvert, it stinks, but networking is the best way. Hope that helps. It's tough. That part, you just got to be lucky sometimes. Meet the right person.
Yeah. From Holly, do you have any tips for adapting to different styles and drawing on model consistently?
Yeah. That's all about foundation, about understanding that every character from Korra to We Bear Bears has these simple shapes that are built in them, and a good design will always have that. And animation, I feel like almost every show has great designs because they know they have to build these models, these styles that can be replicated over and over. So they use these great shapes inside. So if you figure out what those shapes are, you'll find that you'll be able to draw things in different styles and on different models pretty consistently. I mean, it definitely takes mileage. I did that storyboard book and I created these characters for it, for examples. And my first bunch of drawings, I remember I was like, oh, like that and that. And then by the end, I draw them in 5 seconds and they had so much more life and vitality because I put in mileage. Mileage is definitely another thing you have to do for every new show you start. You draw them a lot, they get into your brain, and then you're able to spit them out in a quick and pleasing way. And you'll find your first drawings you did in the day for an hour are terrible, and you'll just redo them at the end of the day in 10 minutes and it'll look much better. I understand the inner forms of a character. There's a YouTube guy, Ethan Becker, who worked on Fultron, and I love his YouTube channel. It's wacky, but he gives really good advice about looking at drawings and trying to understand the form, and he's really keyed into that. So maybe check out his stuff.
Awesome. What are the top 10 or top 5 important skills an aspiring storyboard artist must know to keep the portfolio as professional as possible? I feel like you went over those with the four things.
Yeah, definitely those 4 are important. When you're trying to break in, just draw. Get really good at drawing and be able to show that you can draw a character consistently on a model. One exercise you could do is take a character, maybe an original character, or if you want to practice some character you love drawing, and draw them 10 times and every angle you can imagine, upside down, flipped around, twisting, fighting, whatever. And if you can do that, then you're starting to be able to understand how to draw and understand the forms, the construction underneath.
All right. From Sarah Davis, are there any books you used or would recommend for understanding how to storyboard better?
Yeah. I'm like, I think I have it right here. There's this little book I found years ago. I think it was, I was at Comic-Con or something. And I was like, boy, this is pretty good. Yeah, here it is. This guy. It's weird. It's not a famous book or anything. Cinematic Storyboard Workshop. And then he came out with a part 2. Charles Zimbilis. Oh, no, not. That's Greg Davidson. Is a storyboard artist. I guess he works in a variety of stuff, but he has some really good 2D animation tips, and it goes over a lot of the, sorry, I'm like looking at it, like, he goes over a lot of the fundamentals of TV animation. Some of it's a little archaic because the camera moves and like the tracking and stuff is more based on when we didn't have computer programs that could do complicated camera moves. So I'd say this book is decent, and it's pretty cheap. It's like, I think $10, $12. So I like that, where it's not some hardbound, expensive art book, Art of Finding Nemo, and you get to look at 5 storyboard panels in there. So I really like that book. Online, I think you can find the best resources for TV animation on Gumroad. There's a few good things. Jim Mortensen. I've never met him, but he's a director. He's a director on Trolls, and he had a great Gumroad packet that talked about different tips for TV boarding. On Instagram, there's a bunch of great people who will put down tips. Nick Ferris, I think is his name. He's a Nickelodeon board artist, and he's posted a few wonderful tips on Instagram. I think online you can find better resources now than you can in any book, especially for TV. And just looking at really good examples of portfolios and people working in the field, I think you'd learn more than a book.
Awesome. In a similar vein, Jack Salazar says, do you have any suggestions for elevating your drawing ability for storyboarding? Gesture drawings, anatomy, books, etc.
Yeah, figure drawing for sure. Doing gesture drawing is really important. I was fortunate to work as an animator for many years, and it's weird. Doing flash animation, you don't learn how to draw well because you're using a packet all the time, but you do learn about posing, and you learn about, having the character move in a pleasing way, arcs, which are all really important. That can be tough to learn if you're trying to up your storyboard game. I think if you could repeat the question just so that I can zero in on it again.
Yeah. Do you have any suggestions for elevating your drawing ability for storyboarding?
Right. I'd say do a lot of figure drawing studies. Again, if you go on Instagram, you'll find some pretty good tips from people. A friend of mine, Ben Lee, he's on Instagram, and he posts a lot of his figure studies, and he has some pretty good tips about breaking down the form. And he's just a really good draftsman. And when I worked with him, we were both animators, and he'd do like 100 figure studies a day. After hours, you just go on a figure drawing page. You can Google search figure drawing, and they'll give you like, what do you want, clothed for 10 minutes each, or 30 seconds each, and then it'll do a slideshow. And he just do studies of people, and he did, I think, 10,000 in the end, and he got really good. There's a lot of mileage, but he did it. There's this one like Japanese artist. I don't know what his name is. I think it's just Red. or like that's his handle. And he has some really great breakdowns on how to do like kind of anime anatomy. And I mean, it's that kind of work in US animation is more rare, but I'd say if you're able to draw like that, you can draw anywhere. Yeah, I hope that answers your question. I think just study. You have to put in the mileage.
From Connor Johnson, how hard is it to get a job at Titmouse? What do they look for in a new storyboard artist?
Oh, well, I think they're like different studios have different difficulty levels. I think feature is really difficult to get into, and live action is really difficult to get into. And that's because there's not as many jobs. Right now, there's a ton of jobs, and Titmouse has a lot of openings, so it's easier to get into. And TV in particular, on every show, you have probably 8 board artists, 4 storyboard revisionists, 2 to 4 directors, 1 supervising director. That's a lot of people. For one feature, you're probably only going to have a team of maybe 10 board artists, and they'll freelance out stuff. I'm not really sure, but it couldn't. There's so many more TV shows than there are features being produced. TV animation definitely has a much wider net it can cast. Titmouse has a lot of work right now, and I think the shows they produce have varying levels of technical difficulty. They're making, Critical Role, which means you have to know kind of that anime anatomy. Like you got to be really, really good draftsman. That would be harder to break into than say maybe one of the primetime shows where you have to be technically proficient, but you don't have to know anatomy to that level. I don't know what. Sometimes they'll make Adult Swim shows, like whatever's out now, and those can be easier to break into because they need someone who knows the program. The drawings might not matter as much, so that could be an easier way in. So I put Titmouse somewhere in the middle of like easier studios to break into. Maybe a little bit easier, especially now with all the jobs.
Awesome. From Andrew Arvin, what do you do if you have tight deadlines but you're stuck, like not knowing how to approach a certain shot, angle, or character design? What steps do you take to bounce back?
Well, a lot of times I'll be, if I'm stuck on something, I'm like, oh, this is due Friday. Okay, I'll wait until. And it's Monday, I'll wait until Thursday to do it. And then my brain kicks into, okay, I have to do it. Let's figure it out. That's a terrible thing to do. Don't do that. But I think you never want to just sit there and be stuck on a problem because you don't have time to waste to do that. You're always behind. You're always working to try and catch up and make do with the resources you have. So what I like to do is leave the problem and keep moving forward. I'll work on other parts of the episode or whatever. And in the back of my brain, that problem will kind of hang out. And usually by the end, I'll have figured out some solution or something will pop in my head and I'll be able to figure it out. So skip it, keep moving, and then move back. Right now I'm working as a writer in a writing group for this project. And you see the same thing in writing where you write it out, you get to act 3 and you're like, oh, this doesn't really work. And you go back to act 1 and you plant something there. And then that sets up the thing in act 3. So a lot of times when you move forward, you'll figure out the problem in the end. You can go back and do it. There's not really any exercises, I think, to figure out problems. Sometimes if I'm like, I don't know a good shot, sometimes, I'll look through one of my books or I'll look online or whatever at shot lists just to be like, oh yeah, tracking shot or something that would fix this. Something like that can help. Be inspired by a good storyboarding. Like if you're in a drawing funk, you look at really great drawings. That's always helpful. My headphones falling off. Yeah, I hope that helps.
Speaking of getting inspiration, can you name some of your favorite storyboard artists we should check out and learn from?
Oh, sure. Yeah, let me actually have that page. I don't know if you have the resource list, but I have a list of people I think are great. But I'd like to email you that list. I could name off a few people. So I have a list of some people off the top of my head that you should definitely check out. Ben Juwono, that's Juwono. He's a director at Disney, and he has some great tips online, as well as great board examples. And he definitely comes from the new school of like drawing simply, but posing the heck out of your storyboard. A friend of mine, Chris Wabara, that's Wbarra. He just has great drawings. They're so solid and clear, and he's very fast because he got this drawing style down pat. Another person I worked with, Kelsey Norden, KelseyNorden. I've known her for a few years, and she's like just what you want out of most board artists, where she's really solid. Her portfolio display is pretty clear. It's just single panels. You get on her website, you're like, okay, I get it. Her drawings don't blow you away, but they're super clear and they're exactly what they need to be for storyboarding. It's easy to get confused when you see so many amazing artists. I see so many artists on Instagram, like, I could never draw that. How? But they can't really do boarding. Like they don't have, they can do that. I can't do it. But boarding is another set of skills and another way to approach drawing. So definitely looking at board examples is great.
Awesome. From Casey Raven, is it better to have a few long storyboards in a portfolio or multiple small stories instead? And is it a good idea to add illustrations to show different drawing skills?
Yeah, I think 3 short examples is better. What I'd recommend is you have, maybe in your first example, it's a walk and talk, like 2 or 3 characters walking and talking, so that you're showing how to carry a conversation, which is what 90% of most cartoons are characters talking. So you want to show that in a fun, interesting way. You want to show a little bit of action, because most shows have some action in it. Most kid shows are action comedy. So that just broadens your net. They're like, oh, they can do action too. Great. Maybe it's at a studio and they're like, okay, this other show could take them. They'll pass your portfolio around. So you want to show both of that. And then, your last, your 3 examples should have a little bit of all that in it. As for showing designs and how you thought about it all, for TV, that doesn't matter as much because we have layout artists, and it's fun to look at, but not as important. I think that's more important in feature, where you could have your storyboard and then you show how you thought about the world and how because in feature it's all about your individual personality and like your filmmaking style. So you want to get as much of your personal style out there, so that matters for feature, not as much TV. TV. Just give me a single panel. Give me 3 short samples. In short, I mean like 100 panels. You don't need to do like some 400 panel opus. Longer is worse. Animatics, you don't need to do that. I wouldn't do that at all, because I have to review, I'm working all day and then at night, okay, time to review these. I don't want to spend 5 minutes watching your short. I just want to go through a few quick panels. I think each person we review, they maybe get 45 seconds where we'll look at their stuff. It's pretty quick. So you want to have stuff that's short and easily digestible. Hope that is clear.
Awesome. We have one asking, could you talk about what feature storyboard portfolios should include?
I can, but as a disclaimer, I've done 2 jobs for feature. I haven't reviewed featured storyboards, so I'm not an expert on the matter. I've taken classes in feature boarding, and I have been on 2 productions, the new movie Rumble and Wish Dragon, where I worked as a story artist. I'd say the people that I worked with, and if from the portfolios I've seen where they got a good reaction, it's always pretty clear right away, like, oh, this person's great. They have a great cinematic eye. They're using really deep shots. They are telling a story from a point of view, and maybe have a unique spin on it. They're funny. They're able to do a lot of different things and show it in that storyboard example. I think, again, for feature portfolio, you'd want to have the single panel and let them click through it. But for that, I'd also include the squares of the panels, like 4x5 squares. And just like 1 or 2 of those to show it. And then maybe underneath that, I'd have designs, and you do want to show your thought process for feature. I'll stop talking about that because I don't have the experience, I think, to talk about it.
All right. From Edith Zhang. So sorry if this is already covered, but any tips for a revisionist who's just starting out?
Yeah. So the revisionists I've always warmed up to they're eager and they want to do the job. It isn't just a job that I don't care about this. I want to do something else. Like, show that you're really gung-ho and like you really want to do storyboarding, because I want to train up revisionists to become board artists, and that takes some investment of time on my part. So I want to make sure that you want to do it and you're excited for that job. So showing that is important. You shouldn't work extra hours. Don't feel like you need to work extra every night. But I'd say if you have spare time during the day, practice drawing the characters or ask for model sheets to get a better handle on them. If you want to do boarding, like, let the director and the producer know. The only reason I moved into boarding at Titmouse was because I was like, I want to do boarding. Give me boarding work. And the producer was like, you want to do that? I had no idea. And I thought they knew. They didn't. Like, you have to be very active in promoting yourself and letting people know, hey, I want to move into boarding. For revisions, listen to the director and look at the red lines and really try and interpret them. Don't just give like the bare minimum. If they give you a red line, like try and plus out the posing and make sure it would animate in a pleasing way. If it's a character walking and they give you one pose of the red line of the walk, like, pose it out. Don't just do that and then slide it. They want to see you do the fill in the blanks and connect the dots.
All right. We have one. What are the main things I should keep in my own stories?
Do you mean for your own portfolio? So I'm not sure.
I believe that's what they're referring to.
Right. I mean, you should keep whatever makes you laugh and you think would be impressive. You usually want to keep this stuff, I think, PG. I wouldn't fill it with anything too gross or maybe mean or anything, because that might limit what you can apply to. If you're like, oh, an opening for Puppy Dog Pals, time to turn in this portfolio, but I have a few sex jokes in it. They're gonna see that and be like, what? Like, not right for here. So if you do have your own personal stuff in it, I try and keep it more generic. That's why I recommended, a chase scene with a dog and a cat, because it's generic. It's everyone can relate to a dog and cat. There's no hidden meaning behind there or anything. Yeah.
Awesome. From Aaron Gutierrez, do you have any tips for coming up with stories that are engaging and interesting to include on a portfolio? I think it's just expanding.
Yeah. Again, keep it simple, like a chase or some kind of action. If you can clearly show you can tell a story without any words, that means you're a good visual storyteller and what would be a good board artist. So try and keep it simple like that. If I were to do a story right now in my office, maybe it's about me doing a Zoom call and I'm really hungry and I can see food over there that I left on the counter, and I'm trying to be, in the Zoom call, but I'm trying to eat at the same time. And that could be a story, and you could expand upon that and make it funny. And it doesn't have to be long. It doesn't have to win an Oscar. You just want to show that you can tell a story quickly and in a fun way. And I'd keep it simple physical conflict.
Awesome. From Sarah Davis, if submitting a portfolio for a revisionist job, how would the portfolio be different compared to a storyboarding portfolio? Would they generally be the same?
Yeah, they're the same. Even when you send out a test for boards, there's no difference between a revision test and a storyboard test. Maybe some productions have done that, but in my experience, I've never seen a difference. Yeah, and when you're applying, just apply with your storyboard portfolio, and they should be able to tell if you can do the revisionist job through that.
Awesome. From Jack Salazar, how many panels would you say is a short amount for a storyboard portfolio?
Well, I'd recommend having 3 examples and try and do the 3 examples in 120 panels. They don't have to be super long. Yeah, I'd not long, good. And it's good for you too, because I'll be honest, the first example you do, when you're done with it, you're going to want to redo all of it because you'll have learned so much. So if you keep them short and you finish it, you can move on and create a new example. I'd say maybe the first example, try and do it in 40 panels, 25 panels, something just super simple. and then expand from there, and then keep generating examples, because when you get into professional TV boards, you throw away so much and you start boarding so many episodes, you realize it doesn't matter. You don't have to be super precious. But what's important is the mileage. So keep those samples short. You'll generate more, you'll get better quicker.
Do you find that, from Laura, do you find that the learning curve is different for new board artists coming from different backgrounds, animation, illustration, for example?
Yeah, definitely. Illustration, sometimes they'll overdraw um, and kind of render the boards where it might not be needed. Really, the only time you need rendering is if there's some lighting in the sequence, and the only time you need to add lighting is if it's important to the story. So some people will go the extra mile to add, you know, flashy stuff to it that isn't really needed for the production board, and that can happen in illustration from illustration people. They'll also they'll just kind of over render stuff. You'll see that from comic book people too. They'll do beautiful drawings, but maybe it'll only be one or two drawings, and you need a bit more. It needs to be fleshed out. From animators, the number one thing I see is they love animation friendly shots, which are like a medium or medium close up, like kind of what I am in this Zoom, because they love to animate. So they want to do all the shots that are fun to animate. And those shots are this, because it's just hands and face. You don't have to worry about drawing a full body. So I'll see an overuse of that in singles. They won't group stuff up because they want to use this shot too much. So a lot of times the animators will have too many shots. They go way overboard. They're used to drawing a lot. So I guess they add too much in this kind of shot.
Awesome. From Casey Raven, what's a good drawing speed you should be able to draw at when boarding for TV shows?
Yeah, that's tough to answer. What I like to do is I will thumbnail all of it first. And I'll get my shot count and my number of the shot count. I'm like, okay, I did 100 shots for this 8-minute long sequence. And I have to finish it by, the 21st. Okay, that means I have to do 10 shots a day in order to finish it on time. And then I'll go through those different shots every day, and I'll really try and time it out and be like, okay, I got to finish this shot by 5. And that means time not to be so precious, because when you start, you're going to be more precious, and by the end, you're going to be real looser and have all the characters in your head. So I recommend attacking it in kind of those big broad ways, because boarding takes so much work and so many drawings. If you look down from like a map point of view and you are able to map it out and give yourself a bunch of little goals, that can really help get you to finish on time.
Thank you. From Janice Tony, there's a few times industry artists will post their boards to social media, and sometimes they're almost fully animated in roughs. How detailed of motion should be determined in the boards to give enough information for a shot in a portfolio?
Yeah, it's crazy, especially the action shows. Like if you've seen the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, some of those boards are so posed out, and they're beautiful. They're awesome to watch. Some of that comes down to the board artists. If they have a really specific action or something in mind, they want to take it to that level. If you look at those boards, the drawings are usually really rough and simple. They aren't going to be fully detailed or anything, which is great. That's the way it should be, because they're giving a lot of information about the action and timing. It depends on the show you're moving on to. If you're on a primetime show, you do need to pose it out quite a bit, and it does need to be detailed. If you're moving on to an action show like Ninja Turtles, kind of that simple, really clear shorthand technique is pretty common. I'd say it depends on the show you're moving on to, what they expect. A lot of shows have what's called a timing director, and they still do this, where they take X sheets, and you don't have to time anything. The timing director will add all the little micro movements and stuff from the storyboard. That job is starting to get phased out now, so more and more of that work is put onto the storyboard team, and it depends on the production you're on, what level of posing they want. If you're able to show in your portfolio that you can pose to that level, it's not a bad thing, because it means you're able to do it, and you're able to think, how will this come back animated? It shows you understand the full process.
Thank you. From Aaron Gutierrez, would you say that storyboarding is a stressful job, or does it all depend on experience and the speed you work at?
Definitely stressful when you first start out. So much of what you set up in boarding can create headaches that continue throughout the process. You can, if you don't do it properly, it can become a really expensive shot or show, or you have the director who has to fix everything, and then you have a difficult working environment. My first job was at Nick, and I did storyboarding, but I wasn't ready. They moved me to boarding right away, not revisions, and I had a terrible time. I felt like I didn't know what I was doing, and I wasn't getting the help I needed, and it stunk. I was so stressed. So you want to usually ease into it from revisions into boarding. And even after you've worked for a while, it can be stressful. If you're on, I worked on that show Turbo a few years ago, and a few people left that and went to Venture Brothers. Turbo is pretty easy. They went to Venture Brothers, and that show is really hard because the showrunner is very particular. So it depends on the production as well. It's a beautiful looking show, but it takes a lot of hard work to get there.
Awesome.
Definitely stressful. Easier as time goes by, but yeah.
What are some of the lessons you learned working as a storyboard artist you wish you knew earlier before starting your career?
Well, this might sound weird, but pay. When I first started, I started as a board artist at Nick, and I got paid, I think, $1,500, which I thought was what board artists made. But that was the junior rate or whatever at the time, a really low rate for board artists. So I had that in my mind. And as I continued in my career, I worked for a long time doing 2D animation because it brought me a lot of joy. I loved doing it. But eventually I was like, this doesn't pay very well, because doing Flash animation at that time, you make $1,100, $1,200. So in my mind, I was like, well, I'm doing something I really love. I'm getting paid a little bit less than I would as a board artist. And then it wasn't until I started boarding where I realized, like, oh, you make much better money boarding. I think the minimum is, union minimum is like $2,000, $1,900, $2,000. They have ways around that for some shows like new media, but TV boarding, you make more. So I wish I understood that to begin with, because I would have had that in the back of my head, I think, and I would have pushed to get into boarding a little bit sooner than I would have otherwise. Probably not the answer you're thinking of, but important to know, because you got to make a living. You'll have a much higher quality of life if you're making more money, and boarding is a good way to make more money in animation.
Awesome. Thank you. What program is the most used or useful in the industry to start creating your portfolio?
I'd say Storyboard Pro. It's what most shows use. It has a little learning curve if you know Flash, or if you know TV Paint, or any other program. You'll probably get the hang of it pretty quick. It does have a few quirks and a few tidbits in it that once you figure those out, it runs great. Photoshop is used mostly in feature. The reason Toon Boom Storyboard Pro is used so much in the industry is it has a lot of export options that allow for production to conform stuff, create stuff for overseas. You can export PDFs, you can export images with tracking, so the editor can easily create animatics. So it has all these built-in features that make it really good for TV animation. A few shows use Flash, or what's now Adobe Animate, for storyboarding. I've used it before. It isn't bad. The drawing tools aren't great in Flash, but you aren't able to export, things with panel numbers and scene numbers with the audio and all that. It's a little bit tougher for production. There's workarounds if you build your pipeline around that. I'd say Storyboard Pro is the best. If you don't have access to that, just any drawing program to get used to drawing. And I hate to say it, but having a Cintiq set up with a dual monitor is kind of the best way to go. Using an iPad or I don't know, something without a dual monitor, you can do it, but you want to have reference up that you're able to look at all the time. So I mean, if you had a Cintiq and an iPad, all that costs a lot of money, which stinks. But Storyboard Pro as well. I think you can do a trial period for a month, maybe a week. I've done that before for small jobs. I'm like, I'll sign up for a week and do a few things.
Thank you. I had a question, more regarding the pipeline. When you get, started on a new board, what do they give you? Like, what are you given as a storyboard artist?
Oh, yeah. Well, do you want to know for a script-driven or a board-driven show?
I think both would be great, if you could.
Sure. Yeah. So a script-driven show, you'll have a sit-down with the director, and usually the supervising director, sometimes the showrunner. It depends on the show. And you, the other board artists, and all these people sit in a room. You'll talk about the episode and what they want. And you'll go through the script, and they'll have notes, and a lot of times they'll have drawings about different locations. A lot of it's pragmatic, like, they invent the rocket in the science lab, and then they take it to the testing ground. And the director will be like, no, that's crazy. That's 2 backgrounds. Let's all do it in the science lab. That way we save money. So a lot of it is like combining locations and combining beats and making sure character motivations all make sense. Sometimes the writers will miss something. So you have to make sure you're catching all those motivations. Like, why did the character, steal that? That was never set up in Act 1, and then they just did that. Like, you have to make sure you catch all those beats. Then you'll get your script handout, what portions you have to board, and from there you will have probably like a week to 2 weeks to thumbnail. You'll have a lot of the turnarounds and all the references, all the backgrounds. A lot of times, if the show's been going on for a while, you'll have, the team hangout, and that's already a background. So a lot of times you can just pop that background in, which will save you a lot of time, and you don't have to invent the new location. sometimes the director will have a few drawings ready, or the art director will have like a rough sketch of a new location. That's kind of the trickiest part when you start boarding, is you're like, oh, I got to invent this new location. That's tough. And it's great if you're able to work with the art director or director, because then you're all on the same page. You're not like, I created a 5-story rotating guillotine machine, and they're like, what do you do? We can't make that. Here, do this. Oh, okay. And then you have to reboard it or rethink it. So you want to be on the same page in terms of location. You have 2 weeks to thumbnail, and then they'll review it as you thumbnail and probably give you feedback and red lines. And then you do cleanup. That's the script-driven way. For board-driven or outline-driven, that's where you get to be a writer and you get a writing credit. What that is you get the outline of the episode, and it will have 3 acts, and you will be working with your writing partner, and we'll talk about the episode, go over all the different beats in it. You'll have turns, like the heroes are arguing because it's laundry day, and they get into a bet about who can wear the smelliest clothing for the longest, and that's the end of Act 1. Where the episode's going. It's some weird smell bet that they're going to do throughout the episode. Act 2 is all the hijinks and gags. Act 3 is the resolution. So you'll talk about all the beats and what the characters need to do to make those turns, but you get to choose how that happens a lot of the time, and all the gags and kind of specific things they say. So that kind of handout, you won't have any dialogue. You'll have to create it, but you'll know where the story needs to go. And you can ask the director or whoever, whatever questions you have, or you might try and, again, combine locations or think about new locations and monsters or villains or whatever, and how to tackle them. Any new characters, go over the character designs. So usually they'll give you something, and if they don't give you anything, they realize that, and if it comes back and they aren't happy, that's more on them, not on the board artist. They're not gonna be mad at you for that. Hope that's clear.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much.
Sure.
So from Andrew Arvin, any plugins or helpful tips for Storyboard Pro you use? Sorry.
Oh, yeah. I could show you a few real quick. If I could do a share screen. Am I able to do that? Cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
Nice. Okay. Are you able to see my screen?
Yes.
Cool. So yeah, here's one I like. I like having a grid, usually to the right, and you can grab it, and then I'll use perspective tool and quickly create a grid that way. And I like that more than the grid tool, just because it's really quick, and I don't know, I just like it. And then you can put your character, whatever, down. Oh, here's a great one. Barry Kelly, who's a really talented director, taught me this years ago. So you want to keep everything vector because it's smaller. It's not going to make your program chug. So you use the soft brush. And I don't know how many people know this, but it's really helpful. So I'm having to lean over to do this. Use a soft brush. You make it as big as possible. And then from there, you're able to create gradients for your storyboard. And gradients are super great because they can add a lot to your boards. such as, you know, I could change this to a lighter color, and then it can become a light. I can show you on the next page. You know, that's how you can create pretty cool lighting. You just use these vector gradient, the soft brush gradient. And even this, adding this can add so much to a board that doesn't have any, you know, it's just a flat board. Oh yeah. I actually prepared a little thing. So you want to use shift a lot because shift will give you a straight line. I'm still got my soft brush. Like that. And the reason you want to use that is it's just super duper fast. It's a lot faster than holding down and trying to get the line. Like, you don't have to think about it. Just hold down shift and try and use that. And you want to use shift for hard objects. So architecture. Oh yeah, I drew this yesterday and it, you know, just took a moment. You just shift, all right. The organic stuff you can do freehand because it's organic. You can put a few shifts in there, and usually mixing a hard line with soft line looks nice. But it's you know, super fast to do that. Yeah, shorthand. I didn't really. Oh, here's one I kind of like, which I don't think a lot of people know about. So yeah, tone shapes. So you have a background like that, which I just drew. To show you how I drew that pretty quick, you just take a big fat brush and you draw it out like that or whatever. And then you can just make it a little bit smaller for the trees in the back. And then, you know, make another layer and make those trees a little bit lighter or whatever. And you can already see like, oh, it's starting to get a little depth. Maybe you shrink all that and then you skew it. And it's just using shapes to design some of the backgrounds you work on. And the reason I like this, and I don't know if I'd imagine a lot of you feel this way too, is normally I'd be working from a thumbnail, not just inventing stuff. So it'd look, but a lot of times I'm like a noodler, you know, I'll be working from a thumbnail. I'm like, okay, here's the tree, and oh, there's the branch, and there's this, and then, oh yeah, another branch there, and then, okay, and there's the bush, and then here's another tree, and we're in a forest, and another tree, and then here's more trees, and I got to add more, and then, oh, the bush in the foreground, I have to add all that. And it can take a while, but if you're just using one stroke to draw a tree, it can be a lot quicker, and you can end up with a background that looks better. Let me see if I'm doing, let me see if I can grab something. Oh yeah, so an example here, another great tip. So I have a character and I want them to walk along a path. I'll find where the horizon line is and the vanishing point, which is right there. Then you take that character, you grab the anchor point, which is this thing in the middle, you put it on the vanishing point. If they're walking from that vanishing point, then you have a way to scale them up. That's always going to be correct. So if you want a character walking past camera, that's a really good way to do it. And you just grab it, move it, and then grab it, move it. And then I'd reorganize these panels. You could see, you know, boop, boop, boop. Like it looks correct because I'm working from a vanishing point and it's really quick. You're not like second guessing yourself. So yeah, I'll do one last thing. Grab this guy. This over here. Okay. Oh, I'll just use this. So if I'm posing out something, I don't know what to do, but maybe a character flying in, I'll just do a triangle guy. A lot of times I'll draw the background and get it really solid looking. And then I'll almost like animate the thing on it, and I'll do it all on one panel. So I'll go, A, B, C, D, E. Just a guy with a sword. And I'll do something like this. Raw. And I'm just making this up, so it might not pose great. And I'll do something like that, and it'll all be on one panel. And I'll use the, whatever this is, auto light table. So I can pose it out that way, and then I'll just duplicate the panel a bunch. And I'm sure there's some board artists out there who's found a better way to do this. And then I'll go through and I'll just delete everything I did except for, the next drawing I have. But I like using this a lot more than the onion skin eyeball, just because that way, once my background's done, like I have the background I want, and I have all the poses I want. Whoops. Goofed that up. So I hope that makes sense. Yeah, I'm trying to rush through this, so I'm not doing it beautifully, but I have it all posed out, and then I can, from there, add I have the background, I have all that. Turn this into a new scene. Then from there, I'll add a camera move or something. I'm like, oh, you kind of went off there, so I'll have a camera move. And then I tend to work in animatic mode just because I think camera moves it's helpful to see all that. So, and then it's not timed right now. And then, I'd repose it. I'm like, oh, it'd be great if the sword was right there and, his face was there. And this is really all you need to do for the thumbs. You're just blocking it out. And then, in the animatic, I time all this and make it much, much, much quicker. Cool. I won't finish it because I know I want to get back to the questions, but.
That was amazing. Thank you.
Sure. Yeah. I hope those are helpful. There we go. Okay. Foo. Ah. and it's just that quick. Cool. Sorry, once I start drawing, I'm like, everything kind of fades away.
All right, from Sarah Davis, what was some of the best advice you were given when you were starting out as a storyboard artist?
Oh, when I started out, probably all of my best advice was from a guy, Sherm Cohen, who's the supervising director on SpongeBob, and he's been on that show forever, and he's worked all over, and he is all about the fundamentals, and he really drilled a lot of those fundamentals into my brain. All the stuff about posing and being clear, and all the stuff about clear staging, just really, really clear cartoon staging. I'm talking like Hanna-Barbera, Yogi Bear, like that kind of staging. How good it is to understand that before you try and do more complicated stuff. And I know he has a few YouTube videos online where he talks about some of the shows he's worked on and why it's staged a certain way. I'd recommend checking out his stuff and understanding those fundamentals. That was like a guiding light for me, and it made my stuff stand out because it was clear. It didn't have like weird breaking the 180 and like weird shots or anything. It was simple, clear, and done. Sherm Cohen. Oh yeah, you found him. He has I know he has DVDs you can buy, but I'd recommend his YouTube channel too. It's pretty good.
Awesome. From Sophia, do you have any advice for college students deciding whether to go into TV or feature? Is it more about what style of storytelling an artist gravitates towards? And is it possible to have both on a portfolio website, or does that look bad?
That last question is tricky. I wouldn't say it looks bad, because if your stuff is gorgeous, then both it will resonate with feature and TV. I think catering to one or the other will maybe help you. I think you have a better shot in TV. Personally, I after doing both, they have huge good things and huge bad things. Feature, it's going to look amazing. Like whatever idea you have is going to be beautiful. But a lot of the boards are left on the cutting room floor. I worked on that Rumble thing. At the time, it was a completely different movie. Probably everything I worked on for it, and that was for half a year, will never see the light of day. If you work in TV, your stuff is going to get seen because they don't have time or money to afford to lose. And just cut whole months of work away. So I think that's one big benefit of working in TV is your stuff will get made. Easier to break into too. Personally, as a storyteller, I like a lot of the stories being told nowadays in TV. It's amazing. The adult animation world is really booming. Stuff because of streaming. There's a huge amount of rated mature type adult shows being made. Success of Rick and Morty and Big Mouth, and there's a boom, and those kinds of stories are kind of fun. I thought Frozen 2 is beautiful, but I don't think I'd want to work on it. That's not the kind of story I want to tell. And if you'd ask me to donate 2 years of my life towards it, half of the stuff I make will be cut anyway. That's a lot to ask from an artist. Like, if you're really passionate about it, go for it. But personally, I like TV, and it's booming right now.
Thank you. Do you recommend applying for storyboard revisionist jobs first if they've never worked in the industry?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, you want to start as a revisionist. There's a lot to learn. If you're in college and you talk to a professional, almost every professional is like, I learned more in the first month than I ever did in college. And it's kind of true. College, like, man, you work so hard in college, but when you're around people and everyone is way better than you, it just kind of elevates you to a higher level, and you're just a sponge, and you soak in all this information, all the drawings around you, and you get elevated. So you don't want to start at a higher level like storyboarding, I think, without more experience. I'd recommend revisions first.
Thank you. Um, Another question. Since networking is really important in the industry, do you have any advice on how and where to network if you don't live close to events to attend?
Yeah, that's tough. The way a lot of classes are working now because of the pandemic could be a benefit for you because they're through Zoom. And you're able to connect through people through Discord or Zoom, um, stuff like that. Uh, I mean, I've always lived in LA, so I have the benefit of being in a community that really supports, I think, and pays really well for animators. So you want, if you're able to be in LA, it will give you a huge leg up. There's no denying that. It's tough to be out of state and break in. You have to be be amazing to do that.
Awesome. Um, I have a question. Another one.
Yeah.
Um, what is your favorite like animated TV show to watch on your days off?
Oh, and there's a that's tough. Lately, I've been watching old Simpsons on Disney Plus. They have like all the seasons. So I've watched Deep Space Homer the other day, and a lot of good old Simpsons because that show is still amazing. It's still super funny, the earlier stuff. And then I'm kind of a nerd. Like I like a lot of anime. I just watched Demon Slayer, had some time off, and just really beautiful animation in that. Um, yeah, I like a lot of cartoons too. I like classic SpongeBob. I like cartoony stuff, Looney Tunes. So uh, for modern cartooning, I don't know. I mean, I've Rick and Morty, of course, and Big Mouth, and I do like a lot of the kind of modern, adult animated cartoons. I watch some kid stuff, or I guess what's considered kid stuff, but not as much. It's tough. Like, you have so much time.
All right. And could you tell us a bit about your upcoming lecture on June 15th?
Yeah, sure. So that lecture, I'm going to talk about a lot. I have a PowerPoint presentation kind of ready to go, and I'm going to practice it later to pare it down because it has so much in it. I'm going to talk about, I'm going to try and give people taking it direction towards what they want in the most practical ways I can think of, which are what the studios are like and what you want to do. And really, I want everyone to leave it thinking like, oh, I want to do this. I want to work here on this, and this is how I go about doing it. I have a lot of resources I want to share for sure, because in a lecture, you can only do so much. I want to do a demo, which is going over some of the storyboarding stuff I showed here, and maybe have a bit more prepared so I can go over it quickly and share even more storyboard hints. And I'm also going to be going over the storyboard packet I made, which has a lot of material about what to do for tests, about testing, what a revisionist does, board artist, director, supervising director, so you kind of understand the landscape. We're going to talk about money, what people make at different levels, So you can think like, hey, this job sounds great. I'd make 100,000 a year. Like I could build a great life doing that. It's good to be informed because, if you're going to dedicate a few years of your life really studying this or really going for it, like you got to know those years of dedication will be worth it in the end. I'm going to go over a lot.
Thank you so much. We're about at the end of the questions for today. I wanted to thank you so much for your time, and we look forward to seeing you again on June 15th.